Standing Order Subcommittee. We have apologies from the Chair today, so can I please ask for nominations for Chair for the meeting?
Could I nominate Councillor Crothers?
Seconded.
Okay. Any other nominations? Councillor Crothers, would you like to take the chair?
Seen the shock on people's faces here. That's okay. Shock on mine as well. Firstly, just as part of opening the meeting up, just like to welcome everybody here. I would like to remind everyone present that this meeting will be recorded and that the recording will be subsequent and available for public consumption or listening. So, first item on the agenda is... Sorry, Ivor?
Chair, are we operating under standing orders at this committee, or are we operating under the decision taken at full council whereby we don't electronically record the votes, i.e. we don't press the button when we give the roll call, because we're told at full council by pressing the button that's recording them electronically?
I suppose that's specific on if we go to vote. Only if we go to vote. I wonder if you could advise us in regards to that. Is it 3.2.2? Just remember that is, because this wasn't brought up beforehand. This wasn't constructed in any way. Let's be clear about that. Rona? So we'll record it in writing. It will be written. If for some reason it does go to a vote, which I don't imagine there'll be much difference in view. I wouldn't have thought amongst the committee. This is very much unpolitical. I would have said this one. So it'll be recorded written. I would imagine it'll be an audio as well, so we can hear what people are saying, and so on and so forth. Whether that's a version of electronic recording or not, I don't know. But anyways, Ivor, well picked up as a point of clarity. So, Sederunt and apologies. Can we go through that, please? Is that yourself, Claire? Is it?
Yes, it is. Thank you, Chair. Just to confirm, we have apologies from Councillor Surtees, and we've got Councillor Davidson here as our substitute.
Okay, thank you, and thanks so much for Councillor Davidson for turning up for Councillor Surtees. Declarations of interest. Any members got any interest who'd like to declare for this committee? Take that as a no. Thank you very much. Now, I think the thing that probably will depends as we go through the committee. Might have an urgent item of business, depending on how we get through, how we can actually address this. Simple thing in regards to substitutes and common goods. Sure, the committee become aware of this. Aaron certainly, and Esther will look at it next week. But there's others. Such like I've looked at this, and it may well become a problem over the summer. So we might have another item of business, depending on how we get on as we go through here. Item number 3 is minute of the meeting, the 2nd of March. It's for noting only. Claire, this is made to full council. We're okay just to note that? Yep, excellent. Item number 4. Rather than just anything to add. Is it Rona? You're the leading these. So, or Nick, whoever's the appropriate officer to lead. But rather than anything to add, I'll just for the sake of being recorded, will actually say anything. Do you want to actually speak to the report, even as long as it's short as you really want? So, item number 4. Is it Nick? I think you're speaking. No, okay. Rona's got to cover this one. So, Rona, just do a quick summary of this report, please.
It's a standard report that we're putting before every committee, just to make sure that members are fully aware of the delegations that have been given by full council. This one is a very simple one. Sometimes the detail of what we discuss is not so simple, but in terms of your delegation, it is clearly written there, and certainly I think worked well in the last council, having that remit and delegation.
Thank you very much. Any questions? Thank you. Item number 5, Dumfries and Galloway Council. It's our area working in local community engagement arrangements. Again, I'll just ask you to speak to this briefly, either yourself or Nick, depending who you think is appropriate. Sorry, it's Liz, isn't it? Derek, it's you, Derek. You're here. Right, okay. Derek, do you want to say a few words to this, please?
Thank you, Chairman. Happy to do so. The purpose of this report is to provide this subcommittee with some information in relation to the membership, frequency and timing of area committees, as well as options in relation to local community engagement. And members will recall the reason for the report being here today is within the delegations of the subcommittee to look at these matters, and it was agreed at the first full council on the 23rd of May that a report would be brought on these terms. So the report sets out these details before members. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Derek. I'll open up to the floor. We've got 5 recommendations in front of us. 2.1 is to consider the proposed remit for Area Committee as per paragraph 3.14, which refers to the appendix. Appendix 2. Stephen?
Yeah, I mean, thank you, Chair. I think if you're taking them each recommendation one by one, obviously it makes more sense. But in terms of area committees, I mean, as it says in 3.14 in Appendix 2, I think there's I mean, that's eminently sensible in terms of area committees from the business perspective. You know, the meetings that we have during the day, etc. I mean, I don't know what other members' views are on that, but I'm reasonably comfortable to discuss around what's been suggested in there as is.
Any other members got any particular views in regards to that? Councillor Brodie, then Hislop. I'm fine with that. Stephen, just add a bit more meat to the bones. I think you saying leave it as is through the day rather than at night time. You're saying at night time rather than through the day.
So, I mean, I suppose what I'm trying to do is get the ball rolling, sort of thing, in terms of other members. But I think what's been presented there, it's offering us to sort of make minor modifications, if you like, around that sort of suggestion. So I would say that I'm fairly comfortable with that, but I'm open to the views of other members if they're wanting to input, and then we can maybe consider that through the chair.
Yeah, Councillor Brodie, then Hislop.
Yeah, I think the remit and the calendar, going on to that, it covers the bare essentials of the area committees, but I suppose there's opportunities for getting involved in more and important issues which affect the whole area. So I think there should be opportunities to add in a couple of meetings into that calendar to meet the needs of the area. But I think that'll be possible, won't it, within the recommendations.
Yep. I mean, 5.8.9, I don't know if that's what we've got to pick up on now, but Ivor, I think you're next.
Chair, it's down to the fact that if you take the September meeting, which according to our calendar here would be the Children, Young People and Lifelong Learning, how are young people going to be able to attend this meeting? Because they're all at school. We should be making these meetings accessible to the people they're relevant to. So if you're having a SIPL meeting to look at that in this area, surely the young people, if they're interested, they would come along to it. They can't come during school hours, so should we not be looking to have these meetings in the evening, whereby the public as well, if they're working, they can actually come along and hear what's happening locally, how Nithsdale compares to Wigton or Stewartry. Because currently, I know at Nithsdale Area Committee, if we get 2 people there, we're doing well. And it's usually just maybe somebody's come for a grant application. So I think we need to make sure that people can access these meetings. And by having them through the day, people just can't get to them.
It is kind of odd having public meetings that the public didn't turn up to. Rob? Yeah.
Thank you, Chairman. I think just to follow on from that, I mean, a couple of points, I guess. The performance reporting that we get to area committees is not necessarily the most easily engaged with by members, never mind by members of the public. Now, that might be down to drafting, and I think probably we can improve on that as we go along, but inevitably it's going to remain pretty opaque stuff because there are only so many ways that you gather the data. I mean, I do just rather wonder whether we would have any greater likelihood of there being any larger number of members of the public attending an evening meeting that had a big thick wad of statistics, effectively, than we currently get to our existing evening meetings, which, as Ivor quite rightly says, I mean, you know, very often you'll get nobody at all, or sometimes you'll get a couple of folk turning up to a daytime area committee, basically because they want to see the outcome of a grant application, and really that's it. I mean, what he's, I think, pointing to, maybe inadvertently, is one of the reasons that this paper is here in the first place, which is that actually we've seen that very significant increase in numbers of members of the public attending evening meetings when we had these kind of themed area committee meetings, and for a while they were wildly successful and we got good feedback. And then, you know, the interest in them wore off. They were no longer new. There were only so many topics you could carry on covering before you started repeating them, and of course it just tailed away. And even when we were doing big, serious, you know, engagement and consultation on the budget through evening meetings, there were very, very few people there. I got to say, I remain to be convinced that holding a daytime meeting in the evening is going to actually gather you any public interest or turnout, whatever. I mean, I kind of think that goes back to the good old bad old days when, you know, when the run up to 2007, I turned up to a couple of evening meetings as someone who was thinking about being a candidate. And effectively you had, you know, one or two people with single issues who were interested, and that was it, you know. I just wondered, you know, I hear what Ivor's saying, but I fear we might be turning the clock back to something that's already been tried and basically just kind of died a death.
I just wonder if it's an option, and should we allow for, like I say, this is very much non-political, but just the flexibility for the area committee to make that decision from the month before or the couple of cycles before, to say, listen, we think this will be a well-attended theme, or whether it's health, social care, whether it's children, young people, lifelong learning, whatever it may be. We'll have that one in the evening next time, right, next month or the next quarter, whatever it looks like quarters it'll be, rather than we'll have it through the day. Should we allow that flexibility from an area committee point of view so they can control that calendar? And the only point they've really got control over is getting through the day or at night time, and I would imagine that would be easy to accommodate through the council diary. Should we look at maybe both as an option, or putting that out there as a suggestion? We've not been hung up about this. Richard?
Yeah, I think we should make the meetings as accessible as possible, and that if you're making the meetings accessible, whether people want to come from or not, then that's up to them. But if they've got the opportunity to come along, and the evening's probably the best time for most people, then I think that would be a good thing to allow area committees the discretion to do.
We're touching on 2.1 and 2.2. Tommy? I think what we're thinking about there, if it's flexibility, Tommy, if it was at night, wouldn't it be through the day? One or the other. And so if it was on an evening time, it wouldn't be happening through the day. If it's through the day, it wouldn't be happening at night on that same particular day. Wouldn't it be like trying to address it over two meetings? It'd just be that single meeting. But again, we'll come back to that. We'll get to the recommendations to see what we're thinking. We even have a split opinion on that. Maybe put both forward, because we're looking at a further report coming back anyways, and we'll have another view. Stephen.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, I think one of the things that strikes me about these potential options is that the actual report, I mean, if we're looking at Appendix 2, before we look at the timetable of when the meetings are, what the meetings are, would seem to be the best guide in terms of assessing the nature of the accessibility of them. So it strikes me that effectively we're being asked to review what has already happened, whether it's a report from SIPL, police, fire, etc. You know, we're not there. You know, if you look at the remit in Appendix 2, it's actually, we're scrutinising the delivery, but it's based on effectively retrospective reports, right? And then we can recommend things that have no policy resource implications, or refer something back to the parent committee that maybe deals with, or you know, the appropriate body that can take a sort of forward-looking decision. So I think there's, in terms of making things accessible, there are so many other ways of making things accessible in rural areas, especially now that we've got, I suppose, meaningful improvements in our digital connectivity, etc. But there's many ways that you can make this accessible, because effectively we're just scrutinising on yesterday's business. I think as we go through this paper, we'll see that there's more opportunities to meaningfully engage with people at a time that suits people, rather than what this is, which is effectively a business reporting committee, insofar as I understand what the remit of business area committees are. So, I mean, I don't see the real, I mean, I'm not saying that you should discount anything totally as an option, because everything's there to be considered, but I can't really see, I think we're maybe conflating what the meaningfulness of people attending evening meetings or daytime meetings is in terms of what the business is actually there to be done. Do you see what I mean? So I think there's maybe, we'll come on to those opportunities probably later in what we're considering, but I'd probably prefer that we conduct our daytime business during the day, especially when it's looking back at what's already been done, rather than looking forward to potential decisions for the future that actually matter to the communities.
And when you're saying daytime business, what I'm picking up for that is daytime business means your everyday work and stuff that the general public aren't interested, and we've got a proven track record because they don't actually turn up to committees with this type of subject matter. So therefore, is that what you're saying by daytime business? Because what's daytime, what's nighttime, what's evening, what is it?
No, well, you're quite right. I mean, that's when I say like business, it's monitoring reports effectively. Do you see what I mean? So business in the sense that there's very little, even for members, I would suggest, but except through whenever you're actually making a decision on a report that comes to an area committee daytime, currently daytime, you reflect, you scrutinise, you feed that back to the officers who are there, and then they can find their own ways of taking that forward or back to the parent committee. In terms of members of the public participation, we currently have a mechanism by which community council, etc., can ask a question, if you like, and area committees can choose how they do that. I think that's in the existing framework for area committee business for the public forum aspect. But the time of day of the meetings, I mean, I think there's more to just consider than how many members of the public may or may not choose to come along to listen to a report of what we did last year. And I think that there is also a case where I know my evening calendar, and this is just my thing, is often faced with more diary conflicts than the daytime calendar, because that's when communities actually meet of their own business. So I think if we're imposing another meeting to reach the community, I think we might be calling the wrong shot in that respect, because communities already organise their own meetings in the evenings as when suits them best for their business, and we're there to attend to support where possible. And I don't know about everybody else's calendar, but I know of any given night there could be 2 or 3 meetings, not all of which I'll be able to attend, and that's when the community wants their meetings. So if we're adding into that, I think we might be confusing rather than helping the issue. But that's just my view.
Just for bringing in Ivor, I think that personally, if there's a council meeting on, that for me supersedes any other outside bodies. I look to fulfil my duties as a member of the Dumfries and Galloway Council. So if there's an area committee was on at evening time, and it's back to the point I made to Tommy, it's not either or. It's not both, sorry, it's an either or. It's either through the day or at night time. So if you're doing it at night time, the workload is removed from during the day. It may well conflict with a parent council, it may well conflict with a community council, but ultimately, our responsibility lies with the council. Ultimately, that's where it should lie anyways. These other organisations, and if it's once every 3 months, and it might be 2 times a year, if we're saying, even if we rotate it, so one committee we have an evening time, the next time we have it on a through the day. Health and social care is a big one for me, and it will remain for the next 5 years a big one for me. And that's going by your evaluation there, Stephen. You saying, well, let's look at that through the day because it's no other nighttime stuff. For me, that's absolutely a nighttime stuff. I expect to get people at area committees so they can actually drill down how are their GPs performing, how is the hospital performing, what's the transport links like between them and their services, looking at social work. That's the absolute opportunity for everyday working people to come into an area committee and get the chance to scrutinise at that point. That's certainly how I see it, at least get a chance to hear what's going on. So, right enough for the stuff what we see as being a day job, fair enough, simple stuff like that. So I'll bring you in, Ivan, I'll get a particular point myself just to try and bring us into context. I'm going to come to you, Derek, in particular on 5.8.6. Stephen, you come back first.
No, thanks, I appreciate that. And as I say, I'm not ruling anything out, I just think there's other ways to consider it. I think I was trying to draw attention really to Appendix 2, which is the remit of area committees. And I wonder, I think my concern would be, what would need to be changed there, because at the moment although the public will have an interest obviously in how the council and other public agencies are performing, the information is available and can be made available irrespective of the time of the meeting, but I'm not sure that remit there effectively would provide the appropriate platform for sort of a public forum type scenario. So I think the nature of the meeting doesn't seem to fit with that proposed remit. So I think I'm really trying to get to the bottom of that, because as you know, it's elected members tend to.
Well, I fully understand where you're coming from. You've got a different view in regards to that, Stephen. And I suppose going back to 2007, when that's encouraged me to come forward, because they said, listen, come to council, we're looking at it, we aren't actually looking for the working class person. Somebody's out there doing a job any more than 2.5 days a week. And I still see that as being the case. We still work under that same remit. This isn't my 9 to 5. I'm not here all the time, even though I do spend a lot of time. Have done in the past, but this is not my 9 to 5 job. It's not my main income. And that's how I was invited on and encouraged to come out of the council in the first place. So an evening time certainly suits me. It suits a big chunk of the group that I lead on. and I know it does with other members of the council as well, out with. It really does. They're not taking this as being a full-time job whatsoever, and that's never what has been alluded to by Scottish Government either, proposals that have come forward. But I'd be happy to agree to disagree on that one, Stephen. Like, I didn't see this being a day job. I just see it as being, it's more a vocation, that's as a job. We're in here for the better of everybody, and we're better of the same mind as that. Very quickly then, straight on to you, Ivor.
Absolutely. And just to point of clarification, I don't think we're necessarily agreeing or disagreeing, Chair, with respect. I'm just sort of saying, I'm just presenting a view and a rationale for it, and just questioning what the remit is really in terms of what we're being asked to consider. And just that personally, I don't sort of, I've not yet been convinced. So I don't know if I agree or disagree with you, Chair. So, you know, let's not go that far so soon, you know.
Chair, if we're looking at Appendix 2, we're asked to scrutinise and monitor the delivery of local services. But if we look at the timescales, we're at least 6 months, if not 8 months behind in actual end-of-year performance. If you take EE&I, is in November. Well, end of year is the end of March, so you're 8 months after that. It'll take a month to write a report, so that'll be December. So you're into January. You're nearly a year after you might have made a bad job of something, or you made a good job of something, and that's when you can actually have input into it. It's when the actual problem happens, that's when we should be monitoring it. You know, it's too late 8 months afterwards, because by that time it's been through the service committee for their year end, and then it's coming to us as, well, you can have the scraps at the table. You know, this actually, the way it looks, you know, it's a case of what can we find for area committees to do? It's not how can we empower area committees, it's how can we keep them quiet, pat them on the head and say they're doing a good job. We get the 6 monthly reports in March and May. March is the end of the year, and you're just getting a half-yearly report. And the half-yearly report has half the information in it because, well, most of our targets are set in yearly targets. What's the point in having a half-yearly report if you're not going to report half-yearly? So the workload in there is just to keep members, or we'll find a wee afternoon, morning, evening meeting for them, keep them at the road, and they've had their say. We're not actually changing anything or actually influencing anything. We're just being, you know, good boy, away you go.
Sideline. Richard, before I bring you in, what I'm going to ask Derek to do is just quickly sum up. He's heard the debate up to now, the conversation, in 5.8.6 on Appendix 2 in particular, Derek. If you look at that, give us an example, please, taking into consideration what's been said already from members of the committee. And so, just so I'm clear, it says recommend medium-term actions which address failure in implementation of policy, which have policy or resource implications. That ties into, I think, particularly the theme Ivor's mentioned there. I would just hear it as like nodding dogs that area committees not really got to fulfil our functions or our remit because of the timings of the items that are on business. So, can you give us an example that might alleviate that concern for Ivor, because it is a concern of mine as well.
Okay. Thank you, Chairman. I think what members will appreciate is that ultimately, if there is service failure, it should not be addressed through an end of year or a 6-month performance report. So first and foremost, I don't think anybody is suggesting that that's the vehicle. If there is service failure, officers and members have a joint responsibility to ensure that we clarify what the position is, whether in fact evidence supports the view that there is a service failure, and if it's a service failure, first and foremost, it's a matter for the relevant director or the service committee, and therefore that would determine the course of action. And I would anticipate if it was a service failure that had policy implications that were beyond the delegations of the director, it would be a matter for immediate consideration of the next available service committee. So first and foremost, to reassure members that the organisation's committed to delivering excellent services. The occasions of service failure, thankfully, are a lot less than sometimes the public may perceive to be the case. So on that basis, where they do arise, and they're very rarely, through particularly area committees making recommendations. There have been very few occasions when area committees have made decisions on performance reports that have required them to go back to service committee. So I think we need to remember the delegations exist to deal with service failure, very much the remit of directors to pick these things up. Where it requires policy input from members and that requires swift action, again, your delegations allow that to be an immediate report to the necessary service committee. So I would emphasise that. Secondly, in terms of the issue of the public attendance, what we are simply saying to you as members is that all of our evidence, all of our engagement with you and communities over the last 2 years in particular has indicated that simply judging your engagement on how many people attend a meeting is, quite frankly, old school, and therefore it's not seen to be a way of necessarily being accurately engaging the community. Secondly, if you move your area committee business meetings to the evening, I would highlight that you'll have to still change your schemes of operation, because presently, as you'll appreciate, if the public wish to have a say at an area committee business meeting, whether it's day or evening, they have to give you advance notice. So again, just a word of caution that quite rightly, members can choose they wish to have business meetings in the evening, but in fact, you'll have to, as I say, if you want the public involved in business meetings and participating on the hoof, as in just turning up on the night or the day, that's not allowed in the current scheme. They have to give advance warning. And what I'm saying in the report is, quite frankly, again, that doesn't make a lot of sense in 2017 that a member of the public has to give us advance notice. It seems archaic. And therefore, the whole emphasis of this report is saying area committees have a business purpose which is of little interest to the public in the vast majority of cases. What they have an interest in is the issues that require community engagement, and hence why we're trying to address the issue of putting in place business arrangements for area committees and more progressive arrangements for community engagement that go way beyond simply having the odd evening meeting. So that's, in summary, Chairman, the intention of the paper.
I was wanting back in the same point, Richard. All right, okay, different point, Richard.
Yeah, I've listened to it. I think obviously he's right, because he's been studying this for many years. We need to engage more, and as you said, some of the arrangements for the committee don't allow that possible. I don't think we should be afraid of answering any questions from members of the public. So maybe we've got to think about that again and involving people more. I think Ivor's on the right course as well. I think the scrutiny committee, part of our project was to look at community engagement, and we didn't score that highly, and probably we could criticise ourselves as a scrutiny committee by not fully doing that. I think it was a sort of, we had a limited time to do that work, so probably that job's not finished yet. You're the chairman of that committee, maybe we want to consider that. So yeah, I think I'm looking for a great deal from our new area committee chairman in the East. Come up with some good ideas how the area committee can be meaningful to the people. He's come up with a good idea there about digital connectivity. Tried that forward. Got to remember though that quite a lot of the villages in Annandale and Eskdale, they don't have digital connectivity of a serious nature. Obviously, maybe that changed in the next couple of years. So I think, yeah, make the the orders for the area committee reflect the need to not to distance themselves from the public, but to engage with the users of the service that we are scrutinising, because we've got lots of statistics, but what does it really mean to the local people on the ground? So let's see how we can make it more meaningful and more and engage more with the local populace.
Thank you very much for that contribution. I will refer back to 3.42 at the end, which is just we're looking for input for here, and that might be the next report that comes forward that actually has that level of information, and it shares all views potentially maybe that's the way forward. So all aspects, all views that have been put forward today, rather than go to any kind of vote, as long as everything's being noted, but we are also being audio recorded as well. Ivor, you were next.
Chair, it's just that Mr. Crichton, I think, helped make my point. Very few, if any, decisions taken at area committee go back to be implemented by the service committee. Why is that? Because we're not actually scrutinising the thing. It's been scrutinised where it should be, and then, you know, like I said, we're being thrown the scraps, find them something to do on a monthly basis, because what else can we get them to do? That's what it feels like being at area committee just now. The reports that come through have had time to come through the service committees, and we're getting them at the end of that, whereby, oh, this is down a wee bit. Yes, but we know about that, and we've dealt with it at service. Well, it's duplication. And people say that's where all the money goes in this council, is in duplication. Maybe we need to find something for the area committees to actually do, rather than just have, you know, recycled reports sent to us.
I mean, I've felt myself recently as time was on. Maybe we've been in opposition as well, I don't know, but should we devolve some of the budgets, roads budgets in particular, I think Annandale and Eskdale, just actually for the members down there to carve that up themselves, even into award basis, because sometimes, well, we know in Annandale, Eskdale what the state of the roads are like. They're by far the worst across Dumfries and Galloway. That can be argued for different people, but certainly from my experience, that's on the bicycle as well, experienced that. But no, I mean, that's, again, when it comes back to, we're going right through to 2.5, which is, we have got, I think, points that are being raised today in regards to the 4 previous recommendations. I'll come back in a further report as outlined in 2.5, 3.42, but we're all bringing up relevant points. But I think ultimately our aim today is to actually make area committee more meaningful, and make them open, transparent, and available to the public in particular. So, I mean, if we can do that, whether we'll go beyond that and take some of the remits off, because it's proposed remit of the area committees from 1st of October. Do we take the half of them off, is what we're saying, or do we leave them on? It's the same old when you look at it. At the end of the day, it's what we agreed a number of years ago. Ivor's got quite strong thoughts in regards to, he feels it's quite ineffective. It's the scraps. Here you go. Should we actually be radical in saying, all right, we'll get rid of some of this supposed scrutiny? It's at a local level, because we're not seeing it, we'll usually see it in context of the region stuff, but, and we'll actually start looking at devolving budgets to the committees, or is that just a step too far? I'm open to any suggestion, and ultimately anything that's said today, it's all we're agreeing at the end of the day is for our report to come back. Richard?
Yeah, I agree with your points. I think to be meaningful, that there has to be a look at devolved budgets to the committee. Yeah, and has got to be meaningful. And, yeah, I think we need to look at that.
You know, thanks very much. But someone else, you can certainly come back to it. I mean, we've plenty of time for discussion if need be. But 2.2 to sorry, I'm not going through these and agreeing them, so I'm just going over them, make sure we're following a due process. But consider the Appendix 2. Note the example area committee meetings at Appendix 3. We're doing that. Consider the options for the membership of the boundary area committees. I suppose we can move on to that one then. We've got any views in regards to Appendix 4 then? Just so we keep the business flowing. Which is because of the restructure of the boundary change, Ivor?
Chair, would it not make it simpler to move it to the same wards as the ward managers cover? That way you would have, I think it's 3 11s and 110. Therefore, they're all about the same sort of size with members, rather than having possibly one ward manager covering 2 areas. You would have one ward manager for the west, one for the central, one for the sort of Nistdale area, and one for the Annandale and Eskdale area.
Annandale and Eskdale, certainly. I think it suits the way it is at the moment. I mean, the only thing, I've brought this up again and again, I don't know if I'll not rattle on about it here, but it's 2 areas in Annandale and Eastdale, Annandale South and Annandale North, have a chunk of Nistdale in it, and we didn't, I mean, I think we should look at least having the chance that if there's a particular item comes up in either of those 2 wards that is in Nistdale, they should at least get the chance to be able to go and speak at Nistdale area committee. Maybe no sitting it, because it would be a massive committee at that point. It'd be bigger than the service committees if Annandale South and North members were able to sit in that continuous. But put that into context, it's probably about, geographically, Annandale South, I think about 20% of the ward sits in Nistdale for me. Yeah, I didn't sit in this area committee. I've had that discussion in the past. So, Rob, you're wanting in there, Rob?
Yeah, thanks, Chairman. It was to get Ivor to explain what it was he was proposing.
My understanding is that there's 4 ward managers, and they each have, is it 3 wards under their sort of area of, that's their line management, and just have the ward manager area as the 3 wards as each area committee. And then that would, you would actually have contiguous boundaries with your area committee rather than having the issues that yourself, where you've got part in this deal in, you would actually have that in your area and work it that way.
I suppose the funding would have to go on. Rob has got to bring Derek in, but go on.
So what happens to Abbey Ward?
Derek, that's your question.
No, I'd like Ivor to tell me what happens to Abbey Ward, actually. It's his idea.
Go on in, Ivor, if you want to.
Well, my recollection, 1, 2 and 3 are first ward manager. Is that right?
Want me to clarify the position, Chairman? We have 3 ward managers, so in effect, for Ivor to clarify, but certainly on Ivor's indication that the ward managers would complement the ward boundaries. You would have an area committee boundary incorporating wards 1, 2, 3 and 4. Another area committee, wards 5, 6, 7 and 8. And the third area committee, wards 10, 11 and 12. So it would be 1, 2, 3 and 4, 5, 6, 7 and 8, 9, 10, 11 and 12.
So just to be clear, Ivor's suggesting we just divvy up the stewardship like a piece of pie.
I'll let Ivor answer that. I don't think that's what his intention was, but
Oh, that's
it's
exactly
certainly
who I'm
describing
directing the
it.
question to.
I think he had a methodology behind it, Rob. But Ivor?
Chair, the current thing is we've got parts of Nithsdale in Abbey Ward, parts of Nithsdale in Castle Douglas Ward, parts of Nithsdale in Annandale North, parts of Nithsdale in Annandale South. They don't have any representation on the Nithsdale Area Committee. Now, if it's good enough for Nithsdale to be divvied up, surely it's good enough for any other area. And my understanding was the reason that we were moving away from having your main officers in Wigton, Castle Douglas, etc., was to get away from this 4 districts. Now, if it's down to 3 area committees with 3 ward managers, well, we could use that. There's no way you can split it without having members on 2 committees with that Abbey Ward. And it's just making a clean break and saying this is where we're going, and you can have discussion on your own ward, and the issues that would be relevant to your ward would be in your area.
And ultimately, this decision is for full council, isn't it? So before I bring Richard in, I think as we're going forward, you're picking up ideas. A lot of writing going on here, especially by Claire, but also by Rona as well. But as long as we're picking up these ideas, these may well come forward as options in a future report, and full council can actually make the decision on it. Richard?
Yeah, I agree with Ivor that there are people in Annandale South that and other wards which don't have any representation on this deal, and there's also a problem that our operational working doesn't meet their requirements. They have to come to me as councillor in Annandale South and Annandale Nithsdale, and sometimes come to you, but but they have to go to Nithsdale services to get report their concerns about local services. So it's a big job to make the operations of the council meet the needs, but it is quite confusing for local people in Nithsdale who are represented in Annandale and Nithsdale District Council. I've got to liaise with two amount of officials, and the EMS inquiries have got to go to 2 different neighbourhood services. So I think we should be asking the council to look at this issue, because it is a problem for the public and for the members, and no doubt for the officials as well.
Ivor's got a proposed solution there, and it would certainly address for both Richard and I think probably maybe 20% of the ward, but maybe 1,200-1,500 people within that area that actually we do represent in Annandale South. So if quite a chunk, and in fact, they come to Arndale, they go to, now, for quite often they actually know they've been referred to, if they want to come for say, a grant application, they come to Arndale, and Estill Area Committee, they sit in this deal, and the money's no the money's divvied up on a geographical basis in regards to the old district areas. So this people in this deal are never getting pointed to Arndale and Estill to ask for monies when they actually live in this deal, and and they're actually applying for money that's awarded on a pro rata basis to Arndale and Estill, which is no grievance from about coming forward and applying money, but there's an anomaly there that I think needs sorted. And Ivor's proposal actually would sort that for us in Arndale South. Would Arndale North as well. Stephen, I think you were voting in.
No, thank you, Chair. I mean, I'm sort of tempted to suggest we, get the kettle on and have a big chat around the round table about this. But anyway, I'm just thinking about the ward manager suggestion. So obviously there's a move, I suppose, in one sense towards contiguous boundaries, etc., in terms of that alignment, if you like, with what's there. However, I mean, we've just come out of a discussion, I suppose, about the essence of area committees being about public accessibility and representation, and daytime, or even whatever the best solution for that is at whatever time, is essentially based on the principle of getting the public participation. Is that kind of fair to say? So it's more accessible, that's. So then, but if there's only effectively 3 ward managers, then that suggests that somebody in Stranraer might have to go to Castle Douglas, which seems less accessible. I mean, I'm drawn back to 3.3 on page 8, which is when there's 70 elected members representing 70 single member wards. Sounds alien to me because I only know the multi-ward system, but I'm sure there's councillors here who do have an insight into that. But if there was a problem with accessibility for the council then in terms of area committees, I can't really see, given the conversation we've just had, how having fewer area committees would make it more accessible to a larger demographic area of people. Do you see what I mean? If anything, the case would seem to be for more, which later in the paper it's talking about ward engagement, which would seem to be more accessible to more people in that ward. So I think I think we've all probably had experiences where we can think of, I can think of areas in my ward where it's Wayside Depot that would deal with something rather than Hart Hill, for example. But I would say that was the anomaly, and I wouldn't want to be making a decision based on best value for the council based on an anomaly when most, you're always going to make border sort of boundary-based decisions, but you would always want to make sure you're getting the best value rather than go to extreme lengths to accommodate a small number of anomalies that are currently being dealt with, maybe not as efficiently as they could, but there's maybe other ways to achieve that efficiency rather than move everything around the exception rather than the main population. So I don't know, it's just to get the idea in there, and as I say, maybe a cup of tea and a biscuit would help ease the flow of this chat, really. But that's just my thoughts, Chair.
We put the kettle on, Stephen. You can start. I mean, I think it's about having a discussion like what we're having. This will be captured and it'll come forward in a future report. It would address some of the problems in the east of the region, like I say, but from what I can see, there's anomalies there. But maybe in the west of the region it's not the case, but we have to actually look at that. Is it too far for somebody to come from Stranraer, expect Stranraer over to Castle Douglas or vice versa? If that becomes the case, is it an operational issue to say that, okay, should it be a 4th ward manager? That's within a remit. And best value, I think, is best value when it comes to area committees. Do we look at area committees and say is best value actually about what's best for the public at large? How does it best suit their needs rather than our own individual needs as members of the council? Surely area committees is about communicating to the public or decision making at local level to the public in the best way we possibly can, about being open and transparent. So that's certainly when we bit. Stephen, on you go.
So it's just exactly on that and on what area committees are about. And I think this is what I'm suggesting. I keep going back to the tea and biscuits thing, but I think it's more what we've got in front. Well, when I came to this meeting, there was a paper here, and I was kind of reading through that, thinking, well, this is the basis on which we're trying to have this discussion. And I'm just worried. Maybe I wouldn't want to be in a position where we're having to take a decision. Not that we're here to do that today necessarily, but based on experiential narrative rather than a sort of firmer sort of evidence base of, well, what is the scope of the anomalies? What are the sort of actual extent of the issues? I mean, we can all think of one or two, but I mean, in the main, a lot of things I would suggest do get dealt with appropriately. So it's really just on what basis would we be making a decision? And maybe I could suggest through yourself, Chair, maybe I could ask the officer to come in and sort of say, well, is this effectively our evidence base here, or are we asking the officers to come back with more evidence to suggest what the sort of anomalies are, if you like, so we can make a better informed decision?
Derek's welcome to come in at that point. I just think come back to the, I mean, whether we adjust the recommendation at the end, because we could draw this to a conclusion quicker if that's what we're looking for. I'm not necessarily looking for that. I'm looking for the best input we possibly can for the members round about the table, but we could involve groups, being involved, discussions, getting invited to talk further about this before this report gets constructed and written before it comes back to full council. But Derek, Stephen's particular point.
Thank you, Chairman. I think paragraph 3.1 of the report is trying to capture, I think, what in essence is the challenge. A legacy of area committees that go back 20 years, and I would suggest in that 20 years there have been peaks and troughs, but generally speaking there has been a frustration for many of the reasons you've discussed this afternoon. What we're saying in paragraph 3.1 is, firstly, clarify whether you want area committees. You don't have to have them. Secondly, you do want them, what's their purpose? Having done that, what we're saying is the bigger prize is what you've been discussing, and the bigger prize is actually the council being more in tune, more responsive, more accountable to the community. And what we're suggesting is, in the latter part of the report, is there are many ways we can introduce new ways of doing community engagement that would mean we would need to lose the history of area committees and all that legacy, and therefore embrace very much a ward working approach to take the council far more locally, far more accessible to local communities at a ward level. So in summary, Chairman, the purpose of the report today is to meet the task given by full council, to give options for area committees in terms of remit, delegations. As one of the members has indicated, you may wish to significantly reduce the remit of area committees. That's within your gift to make that recommendation. The view as your professional advisor is to suggest that in 20 years there's been radical changes in the framework of local government, and therefore I don't personally believe people are bedded to 4 district councils in the extent they were in 1996. Secondly, the public expect the council to be far more customer focused, far more accessible at a community level. The first point of the democratic relationship between the public and you as elected members is in your ward, and therefore what we are in essence suggesting in the report is, if you wish to continue to have area committees, be clear of their remit and their boundaries in terms of function, and secondly, fundamentally look at how best the council can be accountable, responsive and local, and re-establish the relationship between ward members and communities, which is a large part of what you've discussed today. So in summary, as I say, Chairman, there are 2 key considerations for members: the remit of area committees and how the council wishes to go about engaging and involving communities.
No, thanks. That's a really good way of summing it up, Derek. It made me reflect quickly there on the 2015 budget, when the group I was leading at the time put forward a budget proposal to put extra money into area committees, reduce the area committee cycle down to 4 times a year. In fact, we see this in front of us today, and front load into that extra community engagement, what you're talking about. Different views, certainly for my group, in regards to ward workers and how we're working. Ward workers, certainly for Richard in my area, I find working very well for me. It's getting in that lower level within the community. Where communicate, I find it easier. There's things I'm picking up on now as what I used to, going back to the community engagement part in particular. But I mean, I agree with the thrust of this, how it's going forward. It's how do we take it. But I think as long as all views are being captured, and ideally we can invite you through around the group meetings, have further discussion around about this. I think we can get to the bottom of this and agree 3.42. But before I do forget, I didn't want to forget this particular point, because I spoke about any other competent business potentially, but I'm looking at 5.8.9, and it's a relevant point I didn't want to forget, but it came up in Stewart Area Committee, as far as I'm aware, and it may well come up in others. It's administration oversight of common goods and trust as appropriate. Can we address a problem that's come up there round about the quorum of and substitutes of common goods? Put that into context again. We'll leave it to the local member, but what they've outlined to me, 2 local members for Stewart, is that they've got a Stewart Area Kirkcudbright common good, 3 members on it, quorum is 3, somebody's not there, it fails, there's business coming up where one of them can't make it shortly. How does that then? And it's only because I can't apply substitutes from the area committee we made a decision. Perhaps how quickly can we address this, and can we address it through this report here today without going into any other competent businesses? There's a way of getting on about that, because unlike normal committees where you can substitute to a subcommittee of the main committee, we've made a ruling which is different for some reason with common goods, saying that we cannot substitute on a common good committee unless you're from that ward. You can't, just because of the fact you're part of the area committee, like the main committee, you can't substitute. So is that Rona? Yep. Thanks.
Okay, yeah. Just to summarise, for the benefit of new members who have maybe not had the pleasure of sitting on a Common Good subcommittee yet, the Common Good subcommittee must take into account the interests of the people of the former Royal Borough or borough that the Common Good relates to. Therefore, it has been restricted and is now quite consistent across the region that those who sit on the Common Good are members who represent wards that are contained in the former Royal Borough. And as you correctly point out, Chair, that does lead to the problem where in one area we only have 3 members. The way I would suggest that it's resolved in the short term is that decisions are, if you know in advance that there won't be enough people, the decision could be taken at the area committee. And I appreciate that has the same effect, that people then make decisions that are not representing wards in the Royal Borough, but in terms of our scheme and our delegations, that would be the right thing to do, is to have the area committee consider it. I'd be quite happy to bring back a report to the next meeting of this committee about the membership of Common Goods, and if you felt so, we could then make a recommendation to full council for September. I would say that we do have planned for this year a wider look at Common Good committees across the region, because there are inconsistencies. Some Common Good business is dealt with by areas, some have their own committees because they have a substantial fund. However, we're not consistent, and we have said during the course of this year that we would look at that.
What do members think in regards to that, particularly the Stewart area members where the pressure is? I think we've got more than good. David, are you a member of Stewart as well? Either or, whoever wants to come in first. Rob?
Yeah, I've been an anomaly for 10 years, and as much as I've sat on 2 area committees, it just involves working harder. What I suggest in the, as regards the area committee and the Common Good Fund, there is an issue. It's not insurmountable, because business that can't be transacted because there's a lack of quorum for the Common Good Fund can be carried over to the area committee. That's happened in the past on some occasions where there's been something that's been needed within a matter of weeks, given that we currently are on a monthly cycle of area committee meetings. It might be the best way forward to consider this as part of the overall review of Common Good Funds, because there is clearly a fairly broad spectrum of practice as far as Common Goods is concerned, and doing it on a comprehensive basis might be sensible. On the other hand, there's nothing particularly wrong with us getting something forward that we look at the next meeting of this committee. But I would hope that where there are issues with quorum and business not being capable of being transacted, officers are still doing what they did in the past when this happened, and simply taking it to the next meeting of the area committee as an item where it's then transacted. And, you know, in general, you're talking about perhaps 2 or 3 weeks of a difference, given that up until now we've been on a monthly area committee cycle, although it's as well that it's raced, because clearly we might be moving on to well, potentially quarterly, every 2 months, whatever it ends up being. So I think you're right that it certainly needs to be addressed. what I'm suggesting is that potentially we've got time to have a look at this in September at the next meeting, because I would expect that in that interim there would be the opportunities for something to be brought back if the quorum issue arose. We shouldn't lose business or see business inordinately delayed. In the meantime, is what I'm suggesting.
I would imagine before I bring David in, there'll be expedited procedures anyway, same as any other committee if it was a real urgent item of business. Yep, so there is. Yep. David, will you want to say anything about it?
Yes, thank you, Ian. This matter first came up when I was attending the Castle Douglas Community Council meeting, and I think my impression was they thought they were, to some extent, had been blocked for long periods of time by the inability to form a quorum for the meeting. I'm not even sure they're aware of the fact that it could have gone to the Stewardship Area Committee, which meets monthly at the moment, but could go to quarterly. Personally, I'd favour some sort of substitution system, because that way we could keep the decision making as local as possible when possible. I mean, I would imagine normally we get 2 out of 3 to attend, if not all 3. But a mechanism needs to be found, and I'd welcome Rona's input at the next time we meet. Thank you.
Was that Castle Douglas Common Good rather than Community Council?
That was mentioned then. It was something they would like me to look at, and then I mentioned that at the Area Committee meeting, and then we thought we would bring it here. It is, I think it's more acute in a 3-seat ward than it is in a 4-seat ward, but I would imagine it crops up here and there, and the substitution system seems to me to be a good solution. But I'll await your ideas.
Okay, excellent. Anybody else got anything they want to make comment in regards to the report itself? Stephen?
Thanks again, Chair. I suppose in terms of the remit of area committees as presented, on a point of sort of fact, if you like, or a point of information, is there any reason, and obviously this is the day for radical suggestions and solutions, etc., but is there anything that we're required to do by a partner agency, for example, through the vehicle of area committees? And is that something we should also be considering rather than just what suits us in our individual areas, as it were? So we get a sense of, because obviously it's about partnership, we're working with so many different agencies now, but there might be sort of legislation or agreements that we're sort of tied into that require, an area committee model, if you like, in order to actually do the right thing by our partners. So it's really just to get the information from the officers on that. Thanks.
I know Health and Social Care are in a great joint board, but if it's on the same point, Richard, otherwise I'll get the question answered first. I'll get the question answered first then. So I mean, I understand Health and Social Care in particular, but we agreed that at full council, I think. I don't know if it's implicit within the Act, but do you maybe take advice in regards to that? 5.8.2 being referred to, Stephen, which is scrutinise and deliver a health and social care service locality plans against the planned outcomes established within the integrated joint board strategic plan, and the police and fire as well. So that's the 2 I'm being referred to, which is 5.8.2 and 5.8.3 are the 2, I think. Hufty is what I'm being told.
Councillor Brody comes in. So I'm just wondering what sort of weight or consideration we should give that if we're, in terms of how radical we might like to be, in terms of, obviously we've been sort of skirting around the issue of, well, do we actually need area committees at all? But seemingly we sort of do in some form in order to meet that requirement. But so it's really just to get that on, if we're recording this and we're just having the chat without the tea and biscuits, obviously, at the moment, but just to get that noted on the record as well. Thanks.
Excellent. Noted. Make sure. If we want a copy of the notes, a summary of the notes at the end, we come back to that. So we've all got within this room, we've all got a summary of what's been agreed, and if we get a chance to come back, that way we can look at them. So we're talking about them with our group, so we can see exactly what we've discussed. You okay with that? I'll ask for that, Stephen.
Sorry, Councillor Brody, I'll defer to you shortly. But what it is I'm very conscious as well that it's maybe not the delegation of this committee, but given that we're effectively, I suppose, taking a decision on behalf of the communities who we believe would want to have as much access as possible to area committees in whatever format they might end up taking, maybe we should dispense a note of the meeting to everybody who might be affected by whatever area committees end up being, because at the end of the day, that's what seems to be setting the context for this discussion. it's maybe a wee bit facetious comment there, but it's if that's really at the end of the day who we're there to serve in terms of what area committees are meant to do, then we wouldn't want to exclude them from anything really, I suppose.
I mean, I suppose it's for an individual to do what they want. They're online. We can see them sort of just at a note. So when we're talking amongst our groups, so like I say, this is looking at a further report. Bro, I'm going to have to bring Dick in first because he's been wanting it for ages. I've been excluding him. Richard.
Yeah, I nearly forgot what I was going to say about it. When I was a young whippersnapper like Stephen 35 years ago, I was electing a platform that we must have evening meetings in Annandale and Eskdale. We can't have all these codgers of 65, which I am now, not engaging with the public and holding their meetings which are not relevant to us. So I won that 35 years ago. So it'd be strange if I changed my mind on evening meetings, but the point has been made here that there's no point of the public coming to our meetings at the area committee because they're not relevant to them, and which is a shame. So I think we've got to listen to this young whippersnapper's radical comments and give them due thought. So I think so. We've got to listen to that and see how we're going to be more meaningful to the public. I think I agree with the ward workers, and I think that's the way forward to engage at local level. But there's also room for engaging at area level on important subjects to local people. I think one of the ideas of the area committees was that we'd be able to delve below the figures, the regional figures and the KPIs, and make it meaningful to the local area. And that's not really happened to a great extent, so we need to do a lot more work on local. We were told that we'd be able to scrutinise the headmaster of an academy and engage with them to see what was happened to school and how he was meeting his targets. But that's never happened. I think we met once with the headmaster when he wasn't happy with one of the reports and he wanted to be open and transparent about what was happening there. So I think we need more of that engagement on a professional basis.
Rob.
I actually think Stephen raised a very good point. If we are talking about what Ivor's been talking about, it should be a significant change to the area committee boundaries. I think it would absolutely be a need to engage on that. And I'm quite happy to explain to people in Dalbeattie why we should be in with Kellerholm and Kirkconnell, because Ivor thinks it's a good idea. I also think there's something to be said in terms of intellectual rigour here, because we've been talking about having more accessible meetings. We've been talking about having evening meetings. And yet we're talking about having an area committee which might potentially span Stranraer to Council Douglas. Now, reasonably, it's not going to get round that area very often, so it's going to be in each major settlement comparatively rarely. We're talking about potentially people with an interest in something being expected to come from Stranraer all the way to Council Douglas at 7 o'clock at night on a December night. It's not going to happen. I think we need to look more carefully at actually aligning, just as Derek has said, the purpose of area committees with the structure that we actually want them to serve. Because it seems at this point we've got half a dozen different notions which are coming forward, which are all interesting and must all be considered. But the problem at this point is that none of them particularly align the one with the other. That there are things which would absolutely have a bearing on accessibility and public access, and then there are other structural things that would absolutely militate against any meaningful public engagement in any way, shape, or form. There's an obvious tension between these. They can't coexist. I think we run the risk of making life a fair bit more difficult for ourselves in September, because naturally, at the end of it, we're being asked to make recommendations to full council. We're going to have to pick out of these a set of proposals which are broadly coherent and basically feasible. And at the moment, what we've got is a whole assemblage of ideas which basically don't really gel very well together, if you see what I mean.
Page 20 then, Rob. Page 20, we've got 3 options. What's your view?
My view would be to stick with the status quo, although it makes life particularly difficult for me, as indeed it has for 10 years. But I think it's the least worst option, in my view. Appendix 4. In my view, the least worst option, and it also does.
Page 20, Appendix 4, we've got 3 options. Sorry for those who maybe should explain that further. So Ivor's put up a different proposal. It's just so they're getting captured. You're absolutely right. It probably will end up with the same, similar to what we've got now, but we just put here in the options, and if there is a radical difference. But at the next meeting, or through input at the group meetings, it might be that we all come to the same consensus, and it's so long as that report that comes back reflects what's been said, what the group meetings say, and then it'll be for as at the next day here's we've discussed this already. This is what we've thought in the past. We'll go back straightforward and make a clear decision at that point. So I don't think I don't think anybody's trying to. We haven't come in here with a fixed position or anything like that. Just wanted to make sure that the subs on the common good was held. So I mean, Rob's status quo. Ivor's putting his position. Tommy, you want status quo for Tommy? Then anybody else got any other views? David,
Yes, thank you. And if we're trying to make them attractive to the public, I think they should be less frequent. Then they've got more chance there's going to be something of interest coming up to people. I think they should refer to the counties because people can associate with their county, like the Stewartry, and they should be in the evening as well because that's the time of most accessibility. Thank you.
Okay, we'll capture that. Mine is like one or two. Option one or two is what I'm kind of thinking, which is the status quo or a slight alternative in regards to option two. Stephen, you've had a good view on this. I think you've heard your view in regards to that. Do you want to make a particular shot at the options that are presented to us now?
I mean, until I'm convinced sort of, strongly otherwise, I mean, I can't, I don't have a firm rationale really from changing too much beyond option one probably, or two, right? But, and the frequency of meetings, I mean, I think it makes a lot of sense to reduce from monthly to bi-monthly or quarterly, as suggested. But I mean, again, it would have to depend on what business needed to happen at what frequency. So that has to be considered as well. And then in terms of evening or I mean, I know Wednesday evenings just happen to be the one nights where I have a lot of community meetings generally. So and that just happens to be the day area committees are currently on. But I have to accept whatever's going to work the best in terms of what we're here to deliver should ultimately be the basis for a decision. But we don't really have, if you change one thing, it alters something else. So I think we don't really have that at the moment. So unnecessary change with no clear reason or outcome would seem not to be the sensible choice if you're getting some outcome with minimal change. Do you know what I mean? So that's really where I'm at just now.
Ivor, you want to come back in? Tommy? Then Tommy.
It's maybe a sort of different angle, but are the figures that are in option one the figures used for currently splitting the money between the areas? It's just, if that's the case, Abbey Ward gets counted twice. Because you can't have 47,111 in both area committees in Nithsdale and 23 in another one. Surely it would be half of the ward would be in the Stewartry and half the ward would be in the Nithsdale one. Either that or... Yeah, but the electorate in there is how you split the money. Are we actually counting that 8,000 odd twice?
Can assure all members we're not counting the money twice.
I think the point you're making is that it's when it comes to the divvying up, say for grant funding or whatever it may be, or even the proportionate of money too, but that's on the geographical split and there's a formula to that, and this is applying to the members on the committee itself, I think. So, Tommy, you're next. Well, thanks very much for them points, Tommy. And I suppose you've actually got a significant role when it comes to area committees, as is Stephen, as both being chairs of the area committees. So I would imagine you'll have quite a large input in that, but obviously picked up in the debt. There's a degree of delegation. I think Tommy's picking up in there as well, isn't he? No, happy with that. Did I have any other hands up there? I was going to ask Derek to come in then. Derek, will you want to come in?
Thanks, Chairman. Just try and offer some observations, and the main one would be, members, that I think we need to be careful that we're dealing with two issues. Okay, and Councillor Brodie's point in relation to the desire to have a more local discussion with the head teacher is a well-rehearsed view that many members have expressed on many local issues. So paragraph 331 of the report, what we're trying to highlight is that that can best take place at a ward level, and it would involve head teachers periodically, and that's the commitment of the Director of Children and Young People. So what I think we're in danger of doing is actually trying to make area committees having a debate on whether it's 3, 4 or 5 and thinking that will solve the issue of community engagement. And I'm simply giving you a professional view that is our clear view, evidence-based, that if your objective is to engage communities, you need to do something radically different in terms of the current arrangements. And what we're saying is there are 2 ways you can do that. You can distinguish between the business purpose of an area committee, and quite frankly, you can have 3, 4 or 5, and you can continue to do that because the terms of how they operate tend not to involve the public, and your own rules actually don't allow it. If you're serious about community engagement, what we're saying is look beyond area committees and look at what we've set out in the report at paragraphs 331 onwards. That embraces many of the points you've been making this afternoon, whereas I think the point I have to advise you on is you're in danger of thinking that it's the area committees that are going to bring about that community engagement. And what I'm saying to you is that whether you have 3, 4 or 5, our clear professional advice to you is we do not have any evidence to support that, whereas we do have evidence to support a far more localised. And whether that's wards, we are not precious about, but we're certainly clear it is community-based that the public are looking for, and it's very much reflective of the points you've made about the local issues that matter to local communities. And just simply echo the point made by Councillor Brodie, that does include, for example, scrutiny of schools in terms of not the hard data performance, it's the soft discussions around what's happening in the school, what's the level of community engagement. We will do that far more effectively at a local level than we will if we're scrutinising a school that covers only 1 ward. That's far less relevant to all the members who take Dumfries and Nissdale, etc. So it's just, in summary, Chairman, emphasising to members that the report is deliberately highlighting there are 2 debates to be had. One about area committees, frequency, size and remit. Secondly, about how you as a council wish to be more responsive and engaging the communities. And the 2 need to be seen as mutually consistent in some ways, but actually they are achieving potentially 2 very different objectives and purposes.
Thank you, Jerry. David, then we'll get into recommendations and we'll start to sum up and get to a decision.
All right, thank you. I'll just make it quick. Yes, you've spoken about the ward as being the preferable vehicle for local engagement. I think you're absolutely correct there. There's a even smaller pixelation below that, which is the community council. Do we have time for Mr. Crichton to let us know how he thinks the community councils can link into the ward structure and the council structure so we can get the maximum effectiveness from them?
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, certainly, as some of you have seen, that we've done a bit of the looking back, and if you think back to when we had 70 wards, they very much were fairly aligned with the community council boundaries, broadly speaking. Okay, in other words, the number of community councils was broadly similar to the number of wards. So there is no doubt in our mind that 12 wards is a big area. It's a big area and does not necessarily reflect one community. So we're certainly clear. We're not suggesting that a ward is this identifiable community that people all use the same services, same facilities. So we are clear that if that's accepted, that a ward in itself presents a challenge for identifying the communities, trying to engage communities on this additional structure of an area committee is near on impossible, and especially in 2017. So hence, one of the options in the ward events that we've talked about, paragraph 3.1, in terms of Councillor James's question, is we could potentially have a ward event, particularly around an area, an activity, a concern, an issue in the community council boundary area. And that is absolutely fair and reasonable that we could do that. So It gives members that flexibility, and it gives members the decision-making determination as to what the events you want to have, what geographical area you want to cover, whether it's the whole ward or whether it's indeed a part ward. And obviously, quite clearly, a part ward could indeed be a community council boundary.
Thanks. Right, okay, we'll draw this to a conclusion. And because a chunk of mine, especially at the beginning, my views and expressions were particularly about drawing information and views from the committee themselves, and I think that's worked. I think one point that you picked up, I mean, whether it's daytime or nighttime in the area committees, I did express, and I'll come back to you probably through a group setting, but we've got a large number of people who've got 9 to 5, same as yourselves, and having to fit these into their day job as well as, and that's, so it's not just about communicating, how it's not, a nighttime meeting isn't especially about just communicating with the wider public. Community engagement, the way you've expressed it, and is within the report, far better, in my view, as through area committees. Area committees is more about bringing the press in, you get a chance, and the press pick up loads of stories. It kind of, well, that feeds that way. But I think there's another side of it. There's a lot of new members who have got 95 jobs, so on and so forth, and it's whether that balance is struck up, do we have an even, do we have a day. But we'll come to a decision on that, and ultimately, as I said, I wanted to draw that, wanted to make sure we had the fullest of the discussion. So 2.1, just so we're captured everything, remember 2.5 I think for ourselves is the focus. To consider the proposed remit area committees, 3.14 in Appendix 2. I think we've considered that and our views have been captured. Would we agree if that's the case? Yep. 2.2, note the example of the calendar area committees which is quarterly, from what I can see, is an example. We've got a particular view, have they been captured? My view would be personal again, it's no group decision, anything, just four suits me. I tried to get through that 2015, but it was rejected, but really welcome it coming back again here. So, and that's been captured, I think, isn't it? You're absolutely right. You're absolutely, because it's, you move, see, Annie and Leicester, for instance, we're fixated in Annan, so it stays in Annan predominantly, but you move yours from there, Victor. That, we'll capture that, and that'll come forward, and you can pick it up in a group setting as well, Tommy, and that way we'll ask it that as part of the kind of, it forms part of the report as it comes forward. The area committee has their own discretion over its frequency, whether that goes forward or not. But 2.3 is to consider the options for the membership and boundaries of area committees. Paragraph 3.2.1, I asked for an expression on them. Predominantly 1 and 2 was the outcome, I think, as to the status quo, and a slight amendment to that. Ivor's put forward an option relating to the area manager, but we've got all that captured anyway, so we've got an expression which will help us formulate a report. 2.4 is to consider the proposals for improving the council's arrangements for community participation and engagement at local levels presented in paragraphs 3.28 to 3.40. I thought that's an excellent way of going forward. If members, have we agreed with that? We can see that as being even that exact wording, but certainly we do agree with that. Paragraph 3.28 to 3.40 are a good way to go forward. And 2.5 is to agree to the next steps as set out in paragraph 3.42, and that refers to a future committee. So I think that's quite simple. We would ask that report comes back and it takes consideration all the points that have been mentioned here today in simple terms, and we will pick up, I think, through a group setting anyways. We certainly will. And yep, and I think, the groups will naturally invite officers, and maybe officers could actually send out to all group secretaries and leaders to say that, listen, we want to come in and talk to you in regards to this particular item. Excellent. We're for the business. Have we? I think we dealt with the common good because we picked up, we said there's expedited procedures. September, I think we've got to look at that again. It'll be incorporated in the committee, so we're absolutely keen. We'll capture that in the notes. Thank you very much. Cheers.